I'm en route from Swiftsure from Victoria, headed to Port Townsend. I'm going to have a go at putting the spinnaker up single-handed, and I'll kind of walk you through it. It's fun. Now here's the spinnaker. You can see it's in its own bag. It's got two ends. It's got, or two corners, if you will. We've got the red corner, which goes on the port side, and we've got a black corner at the other end that will go on the starboard side. Now this spinnaker in its launch bag is actually attached to the lifelines here, so it can't go anywhere. Opposite side from the pole. The problem here, small problem, is that we're going to be on a starboard tack when we launch this spinnaker. We don't want to launch the spinnaker on the windward side as it is now. It really needs to be launched from here, from the lee side. You'll see why I want to launch it, but basically the wind is going to try to pick that thing up and carry it whatever direction it wants. Now, this spinnaker is in a sock, so we're not just going to have to launch the whole thing like a parachute and have it blow out, but nonetheless the wind is going to try to carry that sock to the other side, so we've got to make sure that that's set up properly. Let's talk about the various lines. Here on the shroud, this black line here, that's our spinnaker halyard. That's what's going to carry the spinnaker up to the top of the mast. That's its halyard. Over on the other side, got a green line. That's our topping lift, and that's the one that raises the pole to a desired angle. Here on the deck, this pink line, laid back a few times in a block. This is our downhaul, or foreguy as it's sometimes called. Okay, I think we're about ready. I probably spent more time actually mounting the camera onto something than it will take me to launch the spinnaker, but we'll see. Things can always go wrong. So as I said earlier, the spinnaker is currently on the windward side, which is not the correct side, and the pole is over on the leeward side, which is actually the wrong side for the pole. So the first thing I'm going to have to do is get the pole attached and over on the windward side, and then move the spinnaker over to the leeward side. Now what I have done in advance already though is I've taken the two control lines for the spinnaker, the guy and the sheet, on the starboard side, and brought them around in front of the jib and made them available and ready with the port side guy and sheet ready to attach to the spinnaker. Now if you're not familiar with a symmetrical spinnaker, you got two control lines on either side. One is a guy, and that would be on the windward side, and that's going to hold the pole back and really give you think of it as the upwind side of the sail. And then the downward side is going to be the sheet. And in this boat, the sheets are lighter colored than the guys, so it's easier to kind of tell them apart. Now, so that means on both sides of the boats there's actually an extra line. So that's going to be on this side, there's going to be a lazy sheet that's not doing anything. On that side there's going to be a lazy guy that's not doing anything. And those come into play when you do a jibe, which we may or may not do here today. So it's important when you think about these lines that you think carefully about how they've been run back, what their positions are, that they're not running under each other in the wrong way. And also think when they're not being used, when it's a lazy sheet or a lazy guy, that it's not dragging in the water. So you just got to keep your eyes open, make sure you know what's going on. Here, for example, I've got the lazy sheet. Looks to me like it's actually a little bit in the water, so I'm going to bring it back a little bit. Make sure it's clear of the water. And it's attached to the secondary winch and ready to go. Similarly, over here on the leeward side, on the port side, that sheet is run back to the secondary winch, which you can't see right now. That's set up and ready to be our sheet when we launch. When we get the pole up, we get the spinnaker properly attached. To make sure we get a good single-handed launch, we'll want to think carefully about how far back to bring the pole, how far back to have the sheets, so that when she launches, we're not doing a lot of scrambling back and forth. She launches with a reasonably good inflation, if you will, right? So I'm going to go through with it. You may or may not hear me, but I'm going to start by getting the pole in the right position. I'm going to move the spinnaker bag over to the leeward side so it's ready to launch. I'll attach the halyard of the spinnaker onto that black halyard line. And I want to make extra sure, by the way, when I attach the halyard, that the halyard is routed on the correct side of the jib. Super important. You don't want to launch on the leeward side and realize once you get it up there that the halyard is actually wrapped once around the jib, because then it becomes difficult to bring it down. And it just wears things out as well with chafe. So I'll take a look at that carefully. I'll look at the running of the lines. I'll just go through the steps carefully, in particular how I mount the topping lift to the pole, how I mount the foreguide, make sure the lines are all running in the right place when we're ready to launch. So I'm just going to get started on that right now. Get the sail or the spinnaker to the other side. Okay, I got my pole, got the spinnaker on the correct side. Just tighten up that top of the lift just a little bit. Be our guide right here, the dark color of those two control lines. You snap that into the jaw. Alright, so at this point we've got both clews of the spinnaker attached to their respective control lines. Got the halyard connected, and you might be asking yourself, are we going to launch this with the jib still up? Now actually we could. We can launch the sock on the other side of that jib, make sure everything's nice and tidy, even launch the chute, then roll up the jib. Works fine. I'm not going to do that this time. It'll be easier to see what's going on, and I'm just more used to doing it with the jib rolled up. So that's the next step. So, let's think this through again. We've got the guy's going to be over there, clipped in currently to the pole. Sheet's going to be over here. We're about 40 degrees off the wind, off downwind here. So it's off our quarter, which probably means the pole's going to come about halfway back. You sort of want to have the pole about perpendicular to the wind. This is a good rule of thumb. Also want the pole to be up. We can either bring the pole up now, or we could do that after we launch. I'm going to do it after we launch because there's some chance that we'll mess something up, a line will be in the wrong place. It'll just be easier to bring that pole back if it's still down. The disadvantage to having a pole down is you got to watch out. That pole can really hurt you. So you got to make sure that your head is not in its way. We want to stay clear of that. It will never go past the jib unless we dip it down. So we're safe as long as we stay as much as possible to the leeward side of the jib when we're messing around up there. Now let's pull that sock up. It's already starting to inflate, you can see that. It means the sock is trying to get up all by itself. So again, I secured those control lines. Hopefully they'll stay. I think we're ready to launch. So let's do some steering. It looks pretty darn good. I'm going to bring the pole up a little bit. There's an incipient approach. Bring it back gently. So she's a little bit of a handful right now, but I'm going to set the autopilot and trim things up a bit. First, I'm going to raise the pole a little bit more. Use a winch because she's a little tight. Yeah, it looks like I had the downhaul still tight, but in fact it was just the right spot, so I'm going to leave it there. A few things to notice. We got a lazy sheet over there, and I took care when I put the guy in to make sure the sheet runs up over the top of the pole. There's a little trigger button, and for me it just makes it so much easier if that sheet is oriented behind that little button. It may seem like a trivial thing, but if the sheet is hanging down, if it's just dangling, when we go to jibe and drop that pole out, it's going to land on top of that sheet. It's just a mess. So it's best if the sheet is on top. And this is a nice ride.